worst part wasn't that my mother took credit for my bakery. It was that she did it at the exact moment I stopped being able to pay my own rent, and she knew it. My name is Quinley. I'm 28 years old, and I spent 3 years building something I was proud of. A small custom cake studio out of Portland, Oregon, the kind of place that smelled like brown butter and cardamom, and had a 2-month waitlist by the time I turned 26. I didn't come from money. My mother made that clear every time the subject of my business came up at family dinners. Quinley's little baking thing, she'd say, the way you'd describe a child's lemonade stand. But when the Portland Quarterly ran a feature on women-owned food businesses in the Pacific Northwest, and my studio was one of 3 highlighted, something shifted. Not in me. In her. I didn't notice it right away. I never do. It started with the book launch. My mother, her name is irrelevant, but my family has always called her someone who fills every room she walks into, had been writing her memoirs for the better part of a decade, a loose collection of stories about her childhood in rural Ohio, her 2 marriages, her garden. She'd been talking about publishing it since before I graduated high school, and last spring she finally did. Self-published through a service my brother found online, with the cover she designed herself and a launch event at the community centre in Sherwood, where she and my stepfather have lived for 11 years. I found out about the event the way I find out about most things in my family. Through my sister. She texted me 3 days before the date. Saturday 2 p.m. Mum's book thing. You going? I hadn't been invited. Not by my mother, not by my stepfather, not even by my brother who lives 20 minutes from me and sees me more than anyone. I stared at the message for a long time before I typed back. I didn't know about it. My sister's response was a single word. Oh, that O sat in my chest for 2 days. Not because it was cruel, she didn't mean it that way, but because it so perfectly captured the thing my family had been doing to me for years. The quiet assumption that of course I already knew, or the quieter assumption that it didn't really matter if I didn't. I went anyway. I showed up in the navy dress I'd bought for my own business anniversary dinner, drove 40 minutes in light rain, and arrived at the community centre with a copy of the book I'd ordered online the day before. Because my mother had not sent me one, and a coffee cake I baked at 6 that morning, because it was the thing I knew how to do when I didn't know what else to bring. The room was decorated nicely. My stepfather had strung warm lights along the ceiling and set up round tables with wildflower centerpieces. People I half recognized from my childhood, neighbors, women from my mother's book club, a few cousins I hadn't seen since a family reunion in 2018, moved through the space with small plates and glasses of sparkling water. A display table near the entrance held stacks of the book, a framed photo of my mother, and a poster with a quote I recognized from an essay I'd helped her edit 2 years ago. I set the coffee cake on the refreshments table without saying anything. Then I found a seat near the back. My mother spotted me about 10 minutes later. She came over with her arms out and hugged me the way she hugs me in front of people. Warmly, performatively. You came, she said, as if she'd expected me to miss it. I always come, I said. She smiled and moved on before I could say anything else. The program started around 2:30. My stepfather introduced her. My brother read a passage from the book. My sister sat in the front row with their kids and laughed at all the right moments. I watched from the back and told myself I was fine. Then my mother stood at the podium with her copy and said she wanted to thank the people who helped her bring the book to life. She thanked my stepfather first. Then my brother, who had formatted the pages. Then a woman named Dee from her book club, who had proofread 3 chapters. Then her friend from church, who had helped with the cover. I sat very still. She did not say my name. I had spent 4 months. 4 months. Going back and forth with her on the chapters about her second marriage. The years that overlapped with my childhood. The ones that touched on things that were mine as much as hers. I had suggested restructuring the timeline. I had rewritten 2 full chapters, because the original drafts were difficult to follow. I had talked her out of including a story about my biological father that she did not have the full picture on, because I knew what it would do to me if it was printed, and she didn't ask. I had sat with her on video calls for hours, gone through her edits, caught her factual errors, helped her find her voice in the sections where she kept defaulting to this stiff formal tone that didn't sound like her. And she thanked Dee from book club. I didn't leave. I don't know why. Maybe because I'd done this too many times, built up to a moment and then swallowed it. Maybe because the room was full of people who knew my mother and not me, and I didn't want to be the disruption. I just sat with my hands folded in my lap and my coffee cake on the refreshment table, and watched my mother sign copies of a book I helped write for an hour and a half. On the drive home, I called no one. I turned off the radio and drove in silence with the rain picking back up outside and the kind of low, specific anger that doesn't feel like anger at all. It feels like tiredness. Like your body has been carrying something for so long that it stopped registering the weight. When I got home, I opened my laptop. I pulled up the shared Google Drive folder my mother and I had been using since the previous fall. Every version of every chapter was there, time-stamped, with my edits in a different color. I had dozens of comments still sitting in the margins. Questions I'd asked, suggestions I'd made, entire sentences I'd drafted because she'd come to me and said, "I don't know how to say this part. Can you try?" I scrolled through them slowly. Then I opened a new folder and started making copies. I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not yet. I was just trying to keep proof of something that I was worried I'd start to doubt. That's what happens when a family spends long enough acting like you don't exist. You start to question your own memory. You start to wonder if maybe you were less helpful than you thought. If maybe the hours felt longer than they were. But the timestamps don't lie. And I had a lot of timestamps. The next few days were quiet. I went back to the studio. I filled a standing order for a bridal shower in Lake Oswego, packed 3 dozen lavender honey cupcakes for a corporate client downtown, and tried to concentrate on the particular kind of focus that baking requires. Precise measurements, real attention, things I could control. My sister called on a Tuesday. "Mom says you seemed off at the launch," she said. I was standing at my prep table, piping rosettes onto a 6-inch round. I kept my hand steady. I wasn't off, I was quiet. "She's worried you're upset about something. Is she?" A pause. "Are you?" I set down the piping bag. She didn't mention that I helped with the book. My sister was quiet for a second. She probably just forgot. You know how she gets when she's nervous. She forgets things. I picked the piping bag back up. "Okay." "Quinley," I said okay. She called back 2 days later to tell me my mother wanted to know if I was coming to my stepfather's retirement party in 6 weeks. It was being held at their house. My brother's wife was handling the food. Nobody had thought to ask me. I said I'd be there. And then I sat with that for a while. The retirement party was supposed to be small. 30 people, maybe 40. My stepfather had worked for the same civil engineering firm for over 20 years, and the people coming were mostly his co-workers and their spouses, a few old neighbours, some people from their church. My mother had been planning it for months. She'd chosen the menu, ordered a custom banner, arranged for someone to bring a projector for a slideshow. I found out about the slideshow from my brother. "Mom's doing this whole photo thing," he told me on the phone about 2 weeks before the party. "Like a timeline of Dad's life. She's been pulling stuff off your old Instagram to use." "She didn't ask me," I said. "Yeah, I know. You know how she is." I did know how she was. I had spent my entire life knowing how she was. But there's a difference between knowing and accepting, and I had been confusing the two for a very long time. Some of the photos she was using were mine. I have a photography hobby, nothing serious, just something I picked up in my early 20s, and I'd spent a lot of time over the years documenting family moments. Holidays, birthday parties, ordinary Sundays, my stepfather hiking in the Columbia River Gorge, my stepfather and my mother on their back porch the summer of 2019, the one where the light came through the roses she'd planted along the fence. I took that photo, I edited it, I posted it, and now it was going into a slideshow at a party I hadn't been asked to help plan, for a man I loved, presented as though it had simply appeared from nowhere. I drove to their house the weekend before the party to pick up a pie dish I'd left there at Christmas. My mother was at the kitchen table with her laptop open, the slideshow pulled up on the screen. She minimized it when I walked in, which was interesting. You only minimize something when you don't want someone to see it. I didn't say anything. I found the pie dish in the cabinet where it always was. I made small talk about the roses coming in early this year. I left. In the car, I sat for a minute before starting the engine. I had spent so many years in that house, making myself useful and making myself small at the same time, helping with things and then disappearing from the credit, being present for every hard conversation and absent from every acknowledgement. The book, the photo, the pieces of my time and attention and labour that had been folded quietly into my family's story of themselves, with my name left off like a footnote they forgot to include. Something settled in my chest, not loudness, just clarity. When I got home, I printed everything. The Google Drive records, screenshots of the original photo post with the metadata still visible, a timeline I made in a plain text document, not dramatic, just factual, dates, contributions, things I'd been asked to do and things I'd done without being asked because I loved them and thought that was enough. I put everything in a manila envelope and set it on my desk. I didn't plan to send it anywhere, not then, I just needed it to exist outside of my own head. The party was on a Saturday in early June. Portland was warm by then, the kind of day that made you feel like things were possible. I brought a lemon olive oil cake I'd made at 5 in the morning, wrapped in parchment, tied with twine. My contribution to the spread, uninvited but real. I found my stepfather near the back porch talking to a man I didn't recognize. He saw me and his face did the thing it always does. Genuinely warm, no performance. "There she is," he said and hugged me. He pointed to the cake on the table. "Did you make that?" "I did. Your mother's going to try to take credit for it," he said, smiling like it was a joke. I smiled back. "I know." He studied me for a second, like he noticed something in the way I said it. Then someone called his name and he turned away. I spent the first hour being pleasant and invisible in the particular way I'd perfected over the years. I refilled my own water glass. I talked to his co-workers about things I didn't care about. I watched the slideshow loop on the projector screen without letting my face change. There I was. Or rather, there were my photos. The one from the Columbia River Gorge. The back porch in the roses. A Christmas morning I'd documented so carefully because I knew it might be the last one we all spent together in the same house. All of them in the slideshow, none of them credited, just floating there like weather, like they'd fallen from the sky. My mother made a speech around 4 o'clock. She thanked my brother for helping with the setup. She thanked my sister for the balloons and the banner. She thanked her friend from church for the potato salad. She looked at me once, briefly, and said, "And everyone who helped make today special." Everyone. I held my water glass and thought about the manila envelope on my desk. I went home before dessert. No scene, no tearful exit. I just found my stepfather, told him I had an early morning, hugged him and left. He walked me to my car. At the curb, he held the door while I got in and said, "I see you, you know." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. He closed the door gently and I drove away. That night, I did something I'd been turning over in my mind for weeks. I wrote a post. Not on social media, not yet. Just in a private document, the way I'd been writing things for myself since I was a teenager. I wrote about the book and the slideshow and the party. I wrote about the 14 years I'd spent showing up for my family in ways they absorbed without naming. I wrote calmly, specifically, without any of the heat I was trying not to feel. Then I read it back, and I thought, this is true. Every word of this is true, and there is not one person in that family who would disagree with the facts of it, only with the fact that I'm saying them. I added the Google Drive links. I attached the photo metadata. I formatted it simply. No drama, no accusations, just a record. The same way you'd document something at work, something you wanted to be able to reference later, because I had learned the hard way that the people who erase you rarely do it loudly. They do it slowly, assumption by assumption, and then look confused when you name it. I sent it to 3 people: my stepfather, my aunt, his older sister, who I've always trusted more than anyone in that family structure, and one of my mother's closest friends from her book club, the one who'd proofread her chapters and been thanked by name at the launch. Not my brother, not my sister, not my mother, just those 3. I didn't send it to cause damage. I sent it because I was tired of being the only one who knew the full picture. The response wasn't immediate. I slept badly that night, woke up before my alarm, and made a pour-over coffee I didn't finish. My phone was quiet until mid-morning. My stepfather texted first. "Can I call you?" I said yes. He called within a minute. He didn't ask me to defend anything. He'd looked at the drive folder. He'd seen the timestamps. "I didn't know about the book stuff," he said. His voice was careful, not guilty, just honest. "I should have asked her." "You didn't know to ask," I said. "No, but I'm asking now." We talked for a while, not about blame, just about what had actually happened. He listened in the way he's always listened, without trying to fix it or explain it away. At one point he said, "You've been doing this a long time, haven't you?" It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. My aunt called that afternoon. She was more direct. "Your mother is beside herself," she said. "She says you're trying to embarrass her. I sent documentation to 3 people. I know, I saw it. Is any of it wrong?" A pause. "No, okay, Quinley." Her voice was different now, quieter. "I noticed the photos at the party. I didn't say anything, and I should have. That's on me. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just held it." "Thank you," I said finally. My mother called twice that evening. I didn't answer either time. She left a voicemail the second time. Just under 3 minutes. Mostly spent explaining that she'd been overwhelmed at the book launch and hadn't meant to leave anyone out, that the slideshow photos were ones she'd saved over the years, and she didn't think of them as mine specifically, that she wasn't sure what I was trying to accomplish by sending things to people behind her back. I listened to it once, then I set my phone face down on the counter and went to the studio because I had an order to finish and the sugar flowers needed time to dry overnight. My brother texted me the following morning, "What did you send Mom's friends?" I wrote back, a folder of records from when I helped with the book, and photo metadata from the party slideshow. His reply took a while. Then, "You couldn't just talk to her." I had been talking to her for 14 years, but I wrote back, I did. It didn't change anything. He didn't respond after that. My sister sent a separate message, shorter. I understand why you did it. I'm not sure it was the right call. I love you. I read that one 3 times. Then I put the phone down and got back to work. The next 2 weeks were the strangest kind of quiet, not peaceful, just empty in the particular way of room after people leave and no one's cleaned up yet. My mother didn't call again. My brother went quiet. My sister checked in once, asked how I was doing. And when I said I was okay, she said good in a way that meant she didn't quite believe me and wasn't sure what to do about it. What I didn't expect was my stepfather. He showed up at the studio on a Wednesday, about 10 days after everything. Just walked in the way he always has, like someone who knows he's welcome even when he's not sure. I was working on a fondant tier for a wedding order, and I looked up and saw him standing in the doorway in his old grey jacket, and I didn't say anything, just pointed to the stool on the other side of the prep table. He sat down. He didn't say anything for a while either, just watched me work. She was upset for about a week, he said finally. Then she got quiet. I pressed the fondant smooth without looking up. Okay, I think she's thinking about it. He paused. I don't know if she'll say anything. I'm not waiting for her to. He nodded slowly. I know. He picked up a bench scraper from the table, looked at it, set it back. The photos she used, the one from the gorge, the one in the garden, those are good photographs, Quinley. Something loosened in my chest just a little. Thank you. You've got a real eye. He looked at me then. You always did. He stopped, started again. Sometimes she doesn't see you because you're too close. That doesn't make it right. It just might be true. I thought about that for a long time after he left. 3 weeks later, a package arrived at the studio. Padded envelope, my mother's handwriting on the address label. Inside was a copy of the book. Not the one I'd ordered online, but a different printing, the one she'd updated after the launch. She'd done a second run, apparently. A small correction in the acknowledgments. I flipped to the page. There, after D from book club and the friend from church and my brother who formatted the pages, was a single line I hadn't been there to hear her add. And to my daughter Quinley, without whose patience and clarity this book would be half of what it is. I stood at the prep table and read it 3 times. It wasn't everything. It wasn't an apology for the party, or an explanation for the years of being thanked as part of everyone, or a conversation I'd been waiting to have for longer than I could remember. It was 3 lines of acknowledgement in a self-published memoir that maybe 200 people would ever read. But it was something, and it was real, and she'd done it without me asking her to. I set the book on the shelf above my workbench, between a dog-eared copy of a pastry technique guide and a photo of the studio the day I signed the lease. Then I went back to work. My aunt called me that evening. She told me she was sending it, she said. She asked if I thought it was too little. I told her to send it anyway. You were right, I said. I usually am. A beat. You okay? I think so. Are you going to call her? I thought about it. The drive out to Sherwood, the kitchen table, the roses coming up along the fence, the way she hugs me differently when there aren't people watching. Eventually, I said, good. She paused. She's not going to be the first one to pick up the phone. You know how she is. I do, I said, and this time, when I said it, I didn't mean it as something I'd been carrying. I meant it as something I'd finally set down. My mother is who she is. So am I. And for the first time in a very long time, I knew exactly which one of us had been doing the erasing, and which one of us had finally stopped letting it happen. I didn't need her to say my name in every room. I just needed her to say it once honestly in print because she chose to. That night I opened my sketchbook, not a baking notebook, just one I keep for writing, odd thoughts, things I can't say out loud yet. And I wrote, you taught yourself to disappear so slowly that you almost forgot you were still here. Stop doing that. Then I closed it and slept better than I had in months. Some people fight back by raising their voice. I did it by keeping records. By being the one in the room who noticed everything and said nothing. Right up until the moment I said exactly enough. I didn't want to burn my family to the ground. I wanted them to see what they'd been standing on. All the invisible work, the uncredited hours, the photographs that looked like they came from nowhere but came from me. You can love people who diminish you. You can love them and still refuse to stay small. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to walk away. It's to simply stop making yourself easy to overlook.